So here's an example of AR that's working in front of you. What's happening there is we have our personalized storybook. The app itself is using image recognition. It uses that as a marker detection, and then it's loading a 3D asset. So that's one example of AR working. And then another method of AR being used is mapping. So what we'll show in this next example is a coloring book, which is being colored in by a child, and however they've colored it in, we can then bring that asset to life and incorporate it into a real-world environment. So you can see now that bat that's been created is flying around. Cool. Thank you, Tej. We got there in the end. So some other examples of AR, which you're probably familiar with. Snapchat, recently valued at 19 billion, uses AR technology, so it uses facial recognition alongside AR to overimpose funny characters. Pokemon Go, which was a combination of Google Maps and AR. Again, insanely popular application, 3.6 billion. This one here is probably my personal favorite. If you haven't experienced it, download WordLens. It's now purchased by Google, so I think it's incorporated into Google Translate, but it allows you to hold up your device to any word in any language, and it instantly translates that for you. So really useful if you're ever overseas in a chemist shop or a pharmacy and you're needing to transcribe a label, that's the app to have with you. So what's holding AR back from being completely mainstream? And I think of this as being two parts. The first part is a universal platform. You've probably seen through that example that we just went through that you need a specific application to use with every AR experience. So you'll have a My Kingdom book apps on your device. You'll need Snapchat, etc. It would be a seamless experience if a device had a universal platform that you could hold up and would just work straight away. The next thing that's a bit clunky is the fact that you're still holding a device. At the moment, with most AR applications, it's not wearable tech. And this is really where I'm seeing the industry moving towards. The world got pretty excited with Google Glass when that came about. Unfortunately, that project never made it to market. But I think it led the way for this next wave of technology to come through, which is what we're seeing with Microsoft HoloLens. For those of you who may not be familiar with HoloLens, I've got a short video which talks about it. And it goes into a bit of detail on what that technology can do for us.
It enables us to do amazing things. But what if we could go further? What if we could go beyond the screen? Where your digital world is blended with your real world. Now we can. This is the world with holograms. What will they enable us to do? New ways to visualize our work.
I have an idea for the fuel tank.
New ways to share ideas with each other.
Okay, so you what?
I just put the images in OneDrive.
Okay.
More immersive ways to play. New ways to teach and learn.
So put the new trap into place of the old one, and tighten here and here.
New ways to collaborate and explore the places we've never been.
Look at this formation. Let's take a closer look.
And new ways to create the things we imagine. Because when you change the way you see the world, you can change the world you see. This is Microsoft HoloLens.
So what Microsoft is doing there really is a bit of a step change to some of the other AR examples I spoke to earlier. The main functionality of that device is it's able to scan the environment and work out which surfaces are applicable to impose an AR image over, which is phenomenal and a real step forward. And I think for me, when we think about the technology and where it's going next, really I feel that there's a huge educational aspect for AR, not only to bridge the challenge of distance sometimes that students will face, but with peer-to-peer learning, collaboration, and I've got another video just to bring this to life where they're actually using HoloLens in an educational setting.
Made for 100 years. Students get a cadaver, then they look at medical illustrations, and it's completely two-dimensional, and the human body isn't.
Microsoft HoloLens is a holographic computer that you wear.
Sorry.
It enables you to bring your digital world into your real world.
At Case Western Reserve University, we are focused on solving problems and creating new knowledge.
My job is to teach, and I really think this could impact almost everything that we teach people. With HoloLens, you can see the muscles on top of the skeleton all at the same time. You can bring them in and out and exactly understand where things sit.
You can take any anatomical part and show any of it. You can move it around, make it kind of translucent so you can see through the outside, and that really helped me understand like how cardiac anatomy works. I actually had a moment where I found the aortic valve, and it was the first time that I'd actually seen the aortic valve in relation to all the other anatomical structures. You know, it was a way of seeing it that you couldn't do with an actual heart.
I think this will improve students' confidence in learning anatomy dramatically.
By creating simulations with the HoloLens that lets them have an experience where they can fail, that would be the best way to learn because we don't allow people to fail too much in real-life medicine.
With HoloLens, you could imagine having a class standing around a model, almost like a tour group in a museum, where they're all interacting completely naturally. I spend a huge amount of time to make sure they become the best professionals because it's all of our jobs to make the world a better place.
I'm working with Case Western Reserve University to create this paradigm shift so that we can leap together with students into the future of education. We believe that HoloLens is going to enable us to do that.
We talked about being able to use it to teach art history. We have an anthropology department too that I think will enjoy this technology.
Anytime you change the way that you see things, it changes the way that you understand them. As soon as you can change somebody's understanding, then they can change the way they see the world.
And I know we've focused on HoloLens in these examples. There are other manufacturers who are building very similar technology. I really see this when I think about AR for even My Kingdom books and personalization that we're doing for entertainment and education. I think HoloLens or that type of technology is going to be the future, and we'll be building ourselves set up for that. So that's my brief summary of AR, where it is now, where it's headed towards. Open to any questions. Yeah.
Hello. Yes, I'm really curious because when I'm a very big fan of Wattpad and online books as well as reading normal books, but one of the issues that I've encountered is that it really affects my vision.
Yeah.
I've never had bad eyesight, but the more I started using my phone and my technology, the worse my vision got, and I started recently needing glasses.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, with this very big change in technology and impact in the virtual reality and augmented reality, what kind of impact will that have on a person's vision, and are they working towards trying to deal with that as well when they're creating these new technologies?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question, and it's kind of, if I think back to when we started My Kingdom books, because we were developing books for kids, it was actually one of the reasons why we went down an AR path, because we wanted it to be a combination of a physical book that wasn't dependent on technology. So if a child just wanted to pick up a book and read the book on its own, it could still work, but then have the AR there as an overlay. I think the point that you're making, though, is is really valid. If we go down a path, whether it's VR or AR, and people are constantly looking into screens, is that going to be a health concern? I'm not a doctor, so I couldn't comment, but I think increasingly we're seeing that as a risk. Yeah. As far as I understand, the developer kit for HoloLens is $1,500, but I haven't heard of the consumer price just yet. But that's bound to come down as more manufacturers get into the space. There's already military companies that are applying their AR from military devices into the commercial space, so we'll see prices come down. Yeah.
The HoloLens examples are some of the great ones for opening people's minds. What are the things that you've seen or imagined looking far out that are using AR technology in a way that's truly transformative for education?
Yeah, I really like this idea. When I thought about it from an educational perspective, is bridging that distance gap. So we're actually, when we're thinking about education being for everyone and being for the masses, actually having a student in one country being able to have a class forum, not only with the teacher themselves, but their peer group in that virtual environment, talking about a 3D model that's in front of them, I think that's game changer. Especially if we can get the price point right. So if we can get the device there and that becomes accessible for the masses, then it's no longer about what area you've grown up in to get access to great education. It's just having access to it.
Hi, quick question. Sorry, over here. What do you see as the big barriers to adoption by educational institutions? You mentioned the price point one, but mind frame, disposition, institutional legacy. What are the barriers?
I think there are loads of barriers, and even in our industry we face that. So we're talking about developing children's books with AR, and parents naturally have a kind of, oh, I'm not so sure I want the kids on any more technology, and I think that will play into education as well. For me, it's that it's risk versus reward. So once the technology starts to prove that its own value, and it's more than just let's not call it a gimmick, but it's more than just doing something different, that's when I think we'll see that shift. And that's where I naturally think more about solving problems, like, say, if it's distance learning, that's when it will add the most value. Yeah.
Just a question. How much development, are you aware of how much development in educational content and modeling, simulation modeling, are already available if you were to buy the technology? I mean, you're obviously dependent on what's available to use.
Yeah.
Otherwise you sit with this stuck.
It's difficult to comment because this isn't readily available technology. So it's still, you can purchase it as a developer if you can gain access through Microsoft or some of the other manufacturers. So from a content perspective, it's all still being developed. I think when you see that example though, outside of education, if we're talking in a corporate world, there's loads of cash points on this because you're talking about software that people can run from home. They no longer need laptops. There'll be a huge financial push to make this technology work. So I would say from a content perspective, it will be there. Absolutely. Even from a creative perspective, where you saw the examples where they were working on the motorbike, I mean, if you're in that creative world, then being able to do that has value. So, yeah. Anyone else? Great. Well, if there's no other questions, I've got AR examples on the back of these cards for anyone. If you haven't tried it, you can download the app, look at the image on the back, and you can see it for yourself so you can try it out. Awesome. Thanks for your time.